I don't usually share overly personal experiences with you. I come from a place where that mode of communication is pretty much against the law. But like many of you, I've had some very vivid dreams during this pandemic. One of them I get about once every 10 days. Goes like this. I am back in New York, about to start rabbinical school all over again from scratch. I'm not so sure about this. Certainly knowing what I know now, it should be a lot easier, but do I really want to start with Bible and Talmud and codes and philosophy and literature and history and some Hebrew and Aramaic and a little Yiddish and Arabic thrown in for good measure? It seems like a lot. There's just also a little factor about moving my family and seeing if they're interested in doing this as well. I struggle with my answer. But one thing I know for sure is if I'm going to do this, I'll need a place to live. I need the key to the dorm room. But I'm having a lot of trouble getting the key. Every time I look for it, it seems to be hidden, or there's a crowd of people, and I can't get to where the key is supposed to be. The head of the school wants to comfort me and says, "This is a seminary. Have a little faith." And after asking a lot of questions and going through a lot of hoops, I finally get the key, and so I can begin. It's just so hard to get the key. I'm not entirely sure what this means, but I can tell you what I want it to mean, and that's my message for today. One thing is certain, this dream beats the other kinds of dreams we've all been having. You know the one, when something awful happens, there's an illness or the death of a loved one, or the sense that everything is just exploding in life. In the course of your sleep, you realize, oh, it's just a dream. And someone says, no, don't worry, it's not true at all. Everything really is okay. But then you wake up, and that's when the nightmare really begins, because those things are all too real. Things like the pandemic, or the 20th anniversary of 9/11, or Afghanistan, and hurricanes and floods, and all of the battles that have worn so many of us down. We all know it. This year is harder than last year in many respects. Last year was obvious, you just have to hunker down. This year is much more of a twilight kind of existence. Virtual attendance at school, at work, in public places, or in person. All in all, it's a hybrid kind of living, something very, very in between. Hybrid living, when what we are yearning for is purebred liberation. And just when we think we're about to see the light at the end of the tunnel, that light recedes just a little bit, just as we're about to reach it. But our task today is reflected in a little story told by Elie Wiesel. According to an old legend, Adam was very fearful to the end of his first day of life. He saw the sun sinking in the sky and said, "Woe is me, because I disobeyed God, the world is darkening and will soon return to chaos." So he sat down to fast with Eve by his side. But when dawn began slowly rising and he saw that there would be a return of life, he said, "So this is the way of nature." And he made an offering to God. Concerning this legend, Elie Wiesel said, God gave Adam a secret, and that secret was not how to begin. The secret was how to begin again. And that is our task as well, friends, to begin again and again and again. We know that we are living in a life-defining moment, and we are engaged in a marathon far more than a sprint. We have no choice but to cope with a tenacious foe and must regularly recharge our resilience and resolve at this time of beginnings on Rosh Hashanah. Let's begin with something that is obvious but seems to elude us. Not everything is broken. Much truly is working. In New Orleans, the levees for the most part held. And we are here today because of thousands of little things that work in our society. Those forces that come together to give us the roads we drive on, the buildings we occupy, the food that we eat. We are sitting now in a building or joining by live stream in a place we did not ourselves build, and it is designed and maintained by people we do not know. We are blessed by this opportunity in real time and virtual life to laugh and cry together. This past year and a half, there have been weddings, bar and bat mitzvah celebrations, other celebrations, britot, baby namings. People have begun new jobs. Now, I know Mother Nature has been quite cruel, but human nature has risen to the occasion in countless acts of quiet heroism that have saved lives and given us hope. How much do we notice what is working? Charles Plum was a U.S. Naval Academy graduate, fighter pilot in Vietnam. After 75 combat missions, his plane was destroyed by a surface-to-air missile. Plum ejected and parachuted into enemy hands. He was captured and spent 6 years in a prison camp. He survived that ordeal, and one day, many years later, as Plum and his wife were sitting in a restaurant, a man from another table came up and said, "Hey, you're Plum. You flew fighters in Vietnam and were shot down." "How in the world did you know that?" The man responded, "I packed your parachute. I guess it worked." That night, Plum couldn't sleep. He thought about that man and the many times he must have passed him on the ship and never acknowledged him. Plum was a fighter pilot, respected, revered. This man was just an ordinary sailor. And it grated on Plum's conscience, thinking of the many hours he and others spent at a long wooden table in the bowels of the ship, carefully preparing the parachute with precision and devotion, knowing that somebody's life depended on it. And now, with full appreciation, Plum goes around the world as a speaker, asking people to ask themselves, who's packing your parachute? And so who has packed our parachutes? And no less important, whose parachutes are we packing in this world and life today? And who has helped us in moments of free fall to float safely down to earth? My friends, we have vaccines. They are imperfect, but they have saved millions of lives. They are our parachute for health and well-being. But there's always a backstory. Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. Bourla's mother and father were among the very few Jews to survive the Nazi occupation of Salonika. Only 2,000 of the 50,000 Jews who lived there survived World War II. For the father and the uncles, they were separated and each presumed that others had died. But miraculously, they all survived. Says Bourla, "My relatives never spoke to me about revenge. They never told us you should hate those that did this to us. Their stories always ended with a celebration of life. Look at us," they would say. "We are alive. We demand respect, but we are alive." This is what moved Bourla to drive Pfizer to develop the COVID vaccine, and in record time. To begin again. You see, we are part of a people who possesses a spiritual DNA that is intolerant of surrender to death and despair. We are enveloped by a fabric of comfort and motivation that says, look constantly towards tomorrow and ground it in today. Moses encounters God at the burning bush and asks God for the divine name. Moses is told the divine name is Eheyeh Asher Eheyeh. Literally, I will be what I will be. The mystery of God will only become clear over time. But in the meantime, Moses has his orders. He is to go to Pharaoh and demand, Shlach et ami, let my people go, because a redemptive tomorrow is defined by today's courage. My favorite example involves a teacher who is not a household name. He lived at the time of the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple in the year 70 of the Common Era. He saw Jerusalem in ruins, and he resolved He resolved that the desolation of that moment would not stand. The end of Jerusalem would not be the end of Judaism. But what would replace it? Yochanan ben Zakkai had a plan. He had himself hidden in a coffin and snuck out of the city under the eyes of Roman soldiers. He made his way to the small town of Yavne on the shore. There he met with the Roman general Vespasian. He charmed the general and told him one day Vespasian would be emperor, which is what happened. He also promises no rebellion against Rome. So what does Yochanan want? Just a school, just my students, just a place to teach Torah. And Vespasian agrees. Bad move for Rome, winning move for Judaism, for it has made the whole difference. Ancient Rome is gone. We are here because of that moment of destiny. Yochanan creates a Judaism that can survive anywhere, that can flourish in the tiniest European shtetl and the largest cities of the world. It is a Judaism based on learning the wisdom of tradition and applying it to every detail of life, of seeking the good, the holy, the godly in the most mundane of moments, and by making human deeds, carrying acts of justice and kindness, the mainstays of life. His students are skeptical. Rabbi Joshua says, "Look, the temple is destroyed. We can no longer bring sacrifices. How are we to gain atonement?" And Yochanan says, "We gain atonement through deeds of loving kindness. They are greater than the sacrifices." Some thought Yochanan a coward for sneaking away as he did, but Yochanan knew there had to be a Judaism that looked to the future. They had to have the means of touching everybody's life in the here and now, or there wouldn't be a Judaism at all. Let others argue, he would say, about the politics, and others fine-tune the theology. Yochanan said, God will emerge through sacred traditions everyone can perform. He knew that each and every one of us is giving 86,400 seconds in every 24-hour period. How will we use them? That was his question, and that is our challenge. And Yochanan believed so much in the power of every individual deed. He said, if you are working in your garden, planting a sapling, and you are told that the Messiah has come, first finish your planting, then go and greet him. He knew what history could be all about. The translation, beware of false messiahs in life. They will take your wallet, they will break your heart. Plant your garden first. From this teacher came our Judaism. It is a Judaism based on community. It is caring for each other. It is sacred relationships. It is sense that every moment can be lived with intention and generosity and hope, that justice and kindness can be realities and not just slogans. And so, over time, this is how our spiritual DNA was transmitted, and our strength and resolve has come to us to never be satisfied with today. Every tomorrow must be made better because of what we do now. The dreamers, the poets, the visionaries, the philanthropists, the sages, the teachers, this is how we committed to building synagogues and schools, Jewish summer camps and JCCs, federations, Hebrew homes, that entire alphabet list of Jewish organizations designed to protect and promote and care about each other and our values. And in so many ways, this is how the state of Israel came to be as well. We have been outwardly directed and inwardly enriched by this way of life. Pikuach nefesh, saving life. It also means saving a soul. We have learned that the rumbling stomach of a hungry child is our spiritual imperative. This is the way we unite as a people and give our spiritual muscles a daily workout. No wonder it says in the book of Proverbs that we who live this way may fall 7 times but we get up on the 8th time to begin again and again. This is not a sad day. This is in many respects a very happy day. Because yes, we take stock and apologize, we repent, but that's a celebration of strength, isn't it? To be able to turn away from the hurt, from the noxious, to resolve to repair relationships, to do and be better is a mark of our humanity and our greatness. This is a reflection of that old Jewish adage that says, our days are like scrolls. Write upon them only what you want to have remembered about you. What would we like future generations to read about us in this defining moment in our world and our response to the pandemic and all of the uncertainty and turbulence? I vote for the title, They Built Their Lives on Hope and Resolve and Met the Challenge. So to begin, a couple of concrete ideas, some suggestions. First, make room for Jewish wisdom. Jewish wisdom. There's an old story about the general sitting in his tent on the field, and the young lieutenant comes racing in and says, General, the enemy is almost upon us. Look at the map. And the general says, young man, get larger maps. The enemy won't seem so close or so fearsome. Jewish wisdom is about expanding the maps of our lives. It's about saying, we have been here before. We have seen almost every calamity, everything the world can throw at us, and we have made it. And so in order to add and make space for Jewish wisdom, a suggestion for a little subtraction. I suggest a media diet, not a fast, but a diet, especially social media. It's wonderful to be connected. That's how we're able to be together in this way and have been for so many months via Zoom and live stream. And it's marvelous to share life's moments with friends. However, what takes place online is usually the elevation of just a snippet of time into something that is larger than perhaps it deserves. And with all of the screaming and the posturing and the attempts to reinforce what we already believe and how to better denounce the other, it's material designed to stimulate the impulses to prove ourselves better. You have to be a little discerning. And I believe those studies that tell us that too rich a diet of this material can make it harder to read things that are complicated, that have depth, that are nuanced. Things like Torah. Because information by itself, friends, is not wisdom. We need less clickbait, less inflammation, and more illumination. So I have a list of Jewish texts for where to begin. Texts that celebrate wisdom and resilience. Texts that come from writers such as Naomi Levy and Joseph Telushkin, and I am more than happy to share them with you upon request. And the second, pick a project. Pick a project to promote the healing power of chesed, kindness, justice. So many things happening within this congregation. Volunteering and Jesse's Garden, the work of Gia, joining with many congregations to promote justice in the city of Hartford. Projects at Federation, the Kosher Food Pantry at JFS, and much, much more. Attend virtually or in person to a daily minyan so that those who are mourners will know they are not alone. And if we should be so lucky as to have an Afghan family moving to our community, let us nurture and help them. This is our way. The redemptive hopes of tomorrow, with the groundwork being laid today. And as for my dream back in New York, the key was there to be found. It just took some perseverance and doing to find it. Have a little faith, I was told. I believe the doors to wisdom and hope often seem locked because the keys to opening them, resilience and perseverance, elude us. The key, my friends, today is our Judaism. Let us live it so it can bless us. Today, the world begins anew. Hayom Harat Olam. It begins again. Let's live the Jewish dream. Let's take the key together. Let's open those doors and walk through them together. Shana Tova.